Morning, everybody, and thanks, Sean, for the intro, and thanks for inviting me here to speak for a few minutes. As Sean has introduced me, I'm Dave Allen, Cleveland Police Fleet Manager. One or two in the audience will know me already. Some of the facts and figures are up on the screen for you there. So regionally, we're quite a small urban police force. We've got a fleet size of anywhere between 260 and 280 vehicles. That's all vehicle types, depending on the role in which they're going to perform. So you've got high performance things for armed response. You've got vans for prisoner transport. We've got covert vehicles that are not in scope. We've got unmarked vehicles. Not every vehicle is identifiable as a police car. We are obliged now to look at all different badges, different brands, different manufacturers. And one of the things that we're really looking at closely is alternative fuel cells for our fleet. We've got to move with the times as well, and with the government guidelines on ICE vehicle production. So we've been engaged with Sean and the project team here at Teesside Uni since last year. It's a 2-year feasibility study to look at whether it's possible to introduce hydrogen-powered vehicles into our police fleets. I'm sure everybody can read what's up there as to why we have police vehicles on the roads. If we didn't have police vehicles out there, cops wouldn't be able to get around anywhere near as well as they do now. They wouldn't be able to respond to incidents quickly. But it's really important that we have a sustainable fleet, that we look for alternative fuel cells. And this is one of the reasons why we're doing this project, to introduce the hydrogen-powered vehicles in the fleet wherever we possibly can. So we're looking at EVs as well, and we've been doing some infrastructure installation for our electric vehicle fleet, which we're introducing drip feeding. And we've got representatives from our estates team here in the audience, so we've been heavily involved in that project in conjunction with the fleet team as well. Looking at the last figure there, 83% of the fleet type is diesel. You may have a bit of a sharp intake of breath at that, but that's common for a lot of police fleets up and down the country. Everybody's doing the same thing, but slightly differently. Police Scotland seem to be the leaders, and they've got a huge, more of an EV fleet, but looking at alternatives as well. But they've got multi-million-pound budgets because they're a country. Everyone else is basically playing catch-up with what Police Scotland are currently doing with alternative fuel cells. So we're trying to do our little bit to help the environment, to provide sustainable police vehicles as we move on in the future.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thanks, Dave. So you can appreciate the complexities of even the Cleveland Police fleet has, if we compare that to other large commercial fleet suppliers. Cleveland has got a very diverse role and requirements to sort of meet as well. So what we're trying to do is really supplement or provide assistance in their understanding that they can actually do that fleet transition from the heavily diesel fuel fleet into something else. We're not standing here saying hydrogen is the golden or the silver bullet. Hardly. I think from our perspective, we're trying to understand the feasibility of introducing that hydrogen into that fleet, recognising what we're doing is trying to introduce choice options for people and fleet managers who need to do that. So the motivation for a lot of that work really stems from Department of Transport, for example. We know where that sort of largest proportion of interest is, certainly in the domestic transportation. I think it says 28%. So we can all sort of recognise where those sort of potential low-lying fruits are. We can try and understand how we can better improve the fleet management transitions to alternative fuels. The government's own requirements, which are articulated through the zero emission vehicle mandate, I think we probably all recognise those. I think we sort of alluded to earlier on today. That's certainly driving a lot of decision-making processes, and being able to support Cleveland Police and other local constabularies. Incidentally, there is obviously Durham Constabulary are obviously operating in the Darlington patch, which covers within the Tees Valley there as well. And we're trying to outreach to those guys as well. and understand what their sort of fleet utility as well, and see if there's any crossover, so we can actually cover the whole Tees Valley perspective as well. And further afield, we know Blue Light Commercial, who do a lot of work with a lot of the Blue Light emergency services. They look at a national perspective. So again, what we're trying to do is supplement what the Blue Light have actually not done up until quite recently. Their work has been sort of signposted up until battery electric vehicles. They've sort of not covered off the hydrogen at the moment because it's just not on anybody's sort of radar at the moment. I think the elephant in the room is trying to understand what they can actually do initially, and the battery it seems to be sort of the more favourable. The infrastructure changes are more mature, and the thinking and how that actually operates as well. So hydrogen, in a lot of people's minds, is still a little bit further out of the immediate reaction to be able to fulfil their mandate requirements. So I think that last point there really sort of emphasises, yeah, there is a lot of support out there, and there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of incentives from a manufacturer's and industry's point of view to be able to provide those incentives to be able to help that decision-making process to find the right solution to whatever fleet you're actually utilising at that time there as well. I don't want to dwell on too much because we can talk about this a little bit, but really the project sort of helps us to understand those sort of a couple of main sort of areas of interest really is to collect that data, understand what that fleet's doing, identify potential vehicles within that fleet which might be more suitable for a different fuel types. So if you've got, for example, one of your speed cameras running around it's static all day, does that necessarily need to be of hydrogen, or can it be a battery? Or have you got a traffic pursuit, high mileage, rapid response? You've got to consider then the fueling places and all those sort of considerations. So a large part of our work is actually understanding the data from vehicles itself and data from the fleet manager's perspective as well. So to supplement that, we also talk about the perception, which is a big thing we talked about this morning in the early presentations. We want to understand how that introduction of the hydrogen fleet is going to be perceived by the public as well. What's the public perception of running a hydrogen car running around in a marked police vehicle or unmarked? What are their understanding of how that's actually understanding? So that's a big piece of work we're actually involved in as well. We've got a couple of guys from our Durham team supporting us doing that work itself. And I guess the other part of that sort of reads onto the next slide really, is we're doing an understanding from the environmental impacts, and we'll do that under the umbrella of a life cycle assessment piece of work. So I'm not sure if anybody's too familiar with that, but that really just given us an understanding of what impact those different vehicle types are actually having on their environment. So traditionally with a diesel car it'd be quite easy because we can just measure how much dirt's coming out the back of those vehicles. But if nothing's actually coming out of the vehicle, a hydrogen vehicle or a zero emissions, then we take that stage further back through the life cycle and understand what the contributing factors are to the environment, either from what we call a well to wheel or a cradle to grave sort of perspective there as well. So we're just trying to fit the framework around our LCA piece of work as well, which should supplement any outputs and recommendations to the police itself. So the graphic there really just tries to capture then the focus of catching that data from vehicles. At the moment, I think we're probably safe to say that a lot of that information has been captured actually on the vehicle, and we're pulling those data loggers out. There is a transition program which Cleveland Police are actually actively engaged in at the moment, which will actually give that information on a cloud-based product. So that will be even easier to actually start understanding in more real time what that fleet's actually doing as well. So what we want to do is try to understand driver behaviour, where those vehicles are actually going, and understand then the fueling types, just try and build a big picture up as well. And certainly working with Simon Bales and understanding the impact on the maintenance, so you have fewer moving parts, for example, and the advantages perhaps of what a battery or a hydrogen vehicle may have against a more conventional internal combustion engine, and all those sort of factors we'll try and piece together and do some data analytics as well. So once we've got all that data, I think the important thing is being able to be smart enough to present that information in a way that is understandable to the audience as well. So again, we'll work with our stakeholders, and understanding how we present that information is going to be the best for those guys, and obviously for the wider community, hopefully as well. That's pretty much. I don't know if you want to add anything else. So this was just a slide for Dave to sort of come back in again if you wanted to.
All I would add into that, and what Sean's talking about, covers a lot of what we do. It's really important that as a police fleet, as a blue light service, we have diversity in our vehicles. For example, if one badge has a critical failure overnight, and I'm not going to pick on your brand, Simon, but all right. If it was a Ford, for example, anyone from Ford in the room, safe there, then that would hit us quite heavily. So it's really important that we diversify on our badges of our vehicles and our fuel cell types as well. And we're quite lucky within Teesside that we live amongst big petrochemical sites, a lot of industry, a lot of technology, a lot of innovation. So it makes sense to tap into that we've got right on our doorstep and utilise whatever they can provide. So myself and my fleet team are really involved in this. We're looking to get demonstrator cars that we can introduce to the fleet right now, hydrogen powered vehicles. So we're excited at what the future brings, and we'll see how it goes.
Great. Thanks, Dave. So I can't leave without just sort of calling out certainly everybody's support from Durham, as well as Cleveland Police and Simon Bales as our partners there as well. We've got representatives from North Yorkshire here as well today, which I'm pleased that gives an opportunity to do a bit of a chat afterwards as well. And as I said, we're talking to quite a few of the different fleet managers within the Tees Valley area as well. So it's not only just the blue light element we're looking at, we're trying to develop partnerships with other fleet managers within the Tees Valley area there as well. Good. So I think that's pretty much about me done. We can probably take a couple of questions before we move on. I think.
Hi, so I'm Tim Edwards, Head of Transport for North Yorkshire Police and Fire and Rescue Service. I think one of the things that's really exciting for me is as much about resilience within the energy that we use for our fleet. So one of the conversations we have quite regularly is, ensuring a supply of diesel. So our, fleet is probably more diesel focused than you in Cleveland at the moment, but diesel supplies is a real issue to us. As we transition to electric, I had our head of business continuity talked to me the other day about when we start to introduce EV charging points to stations, are we going to have diesel backup generators to ensure we can charge our vehicles, which, kind of are laughed at, but I got the point that if we have a power failure, then what? So I get just interested in that bit about local generation of hydrogen, the potential of this through solar or wind or whatever we might have, particularly where we've got North Yorkshire is really rural. So we've got a lot of buildings across North Yorkshire that are very rarely used. They're primed for putting solar panels on, but actually we won't be utilising the energy. Can we put that back into the grid? Or is there opportunity to self-generate hydrogen to then put into a fleet of vehicles? So that's probably an area that about fuel resilience would be interesting for me.
Yeah, I think you raised some really interesting and sort of valid points. From our perspective, Tees Valley is really a centre of sort of focus at the moment in terms of generating that hydrogen, and I think still we're still caught up in those early transitions and being able to. You're not going to turn the key and have all that infrastructure in place straight away. So the purists will probably want green hydrogen refuelling station in place from day one. The reality is the practicalities of that. It's probably not going to happen straight away. So being able to sort of transition through whatever type of colour of hydrogen in those rural places. I mean, there are infrastructure and teams within this conference today, which would be interested to speak to you of how they can actually supply more remote fueling stations and have the hydrogen come to that point, for example, to maintain a presence of fueling within that place. I saw your hand up there, sorry.
I was just going to add, and I'm sure you're thinking about it, kind of following on.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about hydrogen refueling station, so you might just be thinking about a few cars to begin with.
Mm.
Where are you going to do that? What are the implications of doing that? If you end up with your whole fleet operating on hydrogen, you really need to think about that because you're talking about quite a lot of hydrogen.
Yeah.
So try and do a lot of that thinking up front rather than kind of piecemeal. And I'm sure you've got it in what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd go back right to the start and we say we don't see hydrogen as being the only fuel type. I think we probably will look at it being key vehicle choices. Certainly from a police or from a passenger car, we understand how that sort of fits into the puzzle when you start having a look at the light commercial vehicles and the HGVs and what benefit of the payload capacity is against those vehicles to passenger cars as well. So again, understanding the fleet and what the requirement is will actually help us better determine what that requirement long term through analysis as well. And all the infrastructure, what needs to go around that is part of the work we're getting
But
involved.
where you would put that infrastructure, you need to be thinking about that as well.
Absolutely,
Don't assume it's just going to be easy. There are going to be some restrictions you need to keep in mind.
absolutely. Good questions. So just this one came first, sorry.
One of the things that's often said about cars in particular is they sort of sit 95% of their life or some number like that,
Yeah.
sat doing nothing, and that's quite often used as sort of like one of the, if I said supporting arguments for EVs, is that actually there's plenty of time to charge them. They
Yeah.
sit. Have you done any analysis of the police fleet of actually what the utilisation of different vehicles is in different classifications?
Yeah.
You know, is it that they're basically used by one shift and passed on to another shift, you know, or is it that they're actually sat, you know, in the depot
Yeah.
most of the time?
So we're early stages collecting the data, but already we can see patterns emerging, and I think Dave will probably have a better understanding of how those vehicles, but tell you how those
Yeah,
vehicles
so-
are utilised.
You can't put all the eggs in one basket and say a police vehicle is a police vehicle because they perform that many different roles. So if you look at blue light response type roles, these are your traditional marked police cars that you see out on the road, vans and cars. So they are in use 24/7 and they need to be available 24/7. So, and we've got a lot of those around about at the different police stations. I take your point about them standing idle, and yes, sometimes they do. But we're introducing new telematics, which will give us a lot of management data in terms of, and we're reviewing this at the moment with our fleet numbers that I mentioned earlier. So the question is, do we need as many police vehicles as we currently got? Question, yes or no. So we look at how many officers are based at each police station, and then how many vehicles are there. So are there enough to go around if everybody's on at the same time, on duty at the same time, or have we got too many? We haven't got a bottomless pit of money, so we're constantly looking to make savings. But going back to unmarked vehicles, which traditionally just work sort of 8 till 4, 9 till 5, they go within our geographical boundaries, which you mentioned earlier, is quite urban, it's quite a small force. Then there is definitely the potential to look at EVs and hydrogen vehicles to perform that particular role.
Shall we just take one more question, and the other guys we can sort of pick out in the breakout afterwards? Okay, thank you.
It's a really interesting area, this, because looking at it, it's extremely applicable to many other industries. So, sorry, I'm Pete Northern, Northern Gas Networks. So we manage a fleet. We're clearly not blue light, but we have license obligations to get the gas escapes within a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So we can't afford for vehicles to be sat on. I've got to sit on a charger for 20 minutes, but
Yeah.
we've just got to get there.
Yeah.
So we're really interested in where a hydrogen fuel cell would be applicable for certain types of duty
Mhm.
or service, and where EV. So we'd certainly be very interested to understand the findings that you guys get, because there'll be some transfer across in terms of the things that we're looking at. And I guess the other bit that I'm interested in is the user experience. What are the officers saying about the vehicles? You know, I'm driving an EV today, I'm driving a hydrogen fuel cell tomorrow. Are they noticing any difference? Do they have any preferences coming through?
That's a really good point, actually. I know we're pushed for time a little bit, but dealing with police officers, it's about a culture change. It's about embracing change within the vehicles that they drive. And we've been introduced a lot of automatic transmission cars of late. We've recently introduced some Toyota Corolla hybrids into our fleet to run alongside the Peugeots that we've got. They're automatics. The Peugeots we've got are automatics. So it's getting that balance of what new technologies out there, what we can introduce, but also managing officers' expectations about the different types of vehicles. Because they could jump in a van one day, a car the next, a hybrid to a traditional diesel engine. So it's getting that culture change across to them, which is quite difficult sometimes.
I'll just add on to that, and I mentioned earlier, we have social scientists from Durham supporting the programme as well. I think we're just at the moment arranging drive outs. So there'll be an opportunity to speak face to face while they're doing their job effectively, just really understand what their perceptions are. So you mentioned actually driving the vehicles, but also training to actually refuel the vehicles as well, where they need to fuel, how they refuel, and the maintenance. And obviously that's something else.
Yeah, and the
Did you want-
questionnaires as well, the
Yeah.
feedback questionnaires.
Yeah, and the feedback as well. So that's hopefully, the project's quite a large scope of project, but we're trying to sort of narrow it in a little bit. But yeah, that's one of the big pieces of work we're actually involved in as well. So it'd be really, really interesting to see that.
But there's no doubt, sorry, Sean, there'll be training implications to basically teach officers how to refuel safely, where to go, and all the rest of it. They hopefully all know how to put petrol and diesel in. Well, I sometimes wonder. So, whenever you introduce anything new, there's a big moment. How do I do that? I can't do that. But so it's that training, and it's good communication with all the rest of the officers and showing them the way.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much for listening. We will be outside afterwards, so if you want to another chat, then please do so. I'm happy to sort of take some more questions. But I think thanks very much, Dave and
Thanks, everybody.
Simon.